Hey guys, this is week 8 discussion, and for this week we were asked to discuss the importance of attending to diversity when designing our program. Um, and we were, one of the first questions was, what does culturally responsive mean to us? So I think it's actively recognizing and making sure you're putting value on. Um, the students' diverse backgrounds, their experiences, their languages, and not just recognizing it and telling them it's valuable, but also incorporating it um, into the campus culture. Um, so really going beyond just acknowledging its existence, but something more active. Um, I think for your school to be culturally responsive, you have to make sure that every student does feel like their own personal background is an asset to the school and that it's part of what makes the school a great place to be, that it's something to contribute and not something that they should be ashamed of or try to be less of who they are or like it's a problem, something they should hide or try to change. Um, So, the first characteristic that I wanted to talk about was is the school adopting a salad bowl rather than a melting pot approach to education? So one of the reasons I chose this was because I remember, people talk about the United States being a melting pot, and growing up, you hear that, and they mean it in a positive way, I think. It sounds like something that's good. You all come together, and become one type thing, but you don't realize the background or where that's really coming from. And really, the idea was to for immigrants to come here and assimilate and lose their identity and their culture. Um, and so um, you definitely don't want your students to feel that way when they come to a campus. You don't want them to feel like they need to change who they are. Um, I like the salad bowl um, analogy in that, it can't be a salad without each piece. Like it's not good without each different piece, and it doesn't all melt together and become one thing. Um, it's better because of the variety, not despite it. Um, so that means that in a school, a student is never asked to um, forget about their cultural identity. That's not a requirement in order to succeed. In fact, it's detrimental. Um, so why is it necessary? Because the melting pot, uh, I kind of touched on before, historically, it's talking about assimilation to white Western middle class culture. And that's caused a lot of harm to generations of immigrants and students because they were made to feel like that where they came from was not something, it wasn't good. It wasn't compatible with being um, an American. Um, and so that could cause students to feel, if they're feeling that way at home, then that might be how they're feeling at school too. But the salad bowl um, philosophy that tells us that we can coexist and that it's all valuable. So for a scenario, I was thinking about any student who comes into a school that's, a melting pot school, any student from another culture or country, and if they speak another language and they're discouraged from speaking their language and they don't see any kind of representation of themselves in curriculum or anything like that. They might feel like in order to be successful, they have to uh, be more like what they're being shown, and the examples that they're being given, because they don't see any representation of themselves um, in the school. But the salad bowl philosophy would help find ways to um, include her background and her language. And this, one of the reasons I thought of this too is we were reading Code Talkers in one of the English classes at school, and that whole book is about the Navajo kids going to school and being told they're not allowed to speak their language, that it's bad, anything that has to do with their culture is bad, and then later on, they're what makes them different and what they were told was bad is what helps win a war. Um, so um, the implication for that school is whether students from the minority cultures in that on that campus, they might feel they have to choose between belonging with uh, the majority and not being themselves, or choose between being like everyone else and being themselves. And that could have really harmful consequences for their identity, who they are as a person, and also their academic achievement. So the second characteristic that I chose was the school holding the same high academic expectations for every student, regardless of their cultural background, language, race, or socioeconomic status. Um, so this is, to me, I think of not tracking uh, students um, that are in lower level classes, I guess, in making assumptions based on more behavior instead of performance. I should say. Um, I'm sorry, I got lost in my notes. And refusing to make the curriculum easier for certain groups of kids because you believe that no matter what, every student can achieve at a high level when they have the right support and people behind them telling them that they can. Um, sorry, I hope that made sense. Why is it necessary? Because having low expectations of your students is one of the most damaging things that you can do in education. Um, when teachers, whether consciously or unconsciously, expect less from their students, um, they will often internalize those expectations and then they'll perform at that level. And research shows that this happens a lot along racial and cultural lines. But high expectations, when you communicate those to the students, and it's backed up with genuine support, and they know you really believe in them, then you can see amazing things happen with your students. So in a scenario, I was thinking about, I work at a junior high, so if you have in middle school, you have an advanced track or remedial track, and say you were looking at the data and you realize that the advanced track was almost all white and Asian, and the remedial track is predominantly Black and Latino, then you start really digging in and you see that a lot of these placement decisions were made based on teacher recommendations that were really just kind of based on students' behavior and whether or not the teacher thought that they put a lot of effort in rather than their actual um, academic performance. Because you may think, oh, well, he's smart, but he's not gonna, behave or whatever, so he shouldn't be in that class. So instead of letting that continue, because if you're having those expectations and saying these things about the students, and of course they're probably gonna, you know, perform at that level instead of rising to a higher level, you should advocate for um, maybe having open enrollment in those courses, let them try. Um, and then you might see that the demographics shift in those classes and kids are feeling more empowered and like they can do it. So then for the third characteristic, I had chosen about how the school infuses multiculturalism and diversity in a non-stereotypical manner throughout the curriculum and the school year. So a school can say it's multicultural, but still not really do anything beyond, oh, it's, you're celebrating a country because it's this month or it's this day, and, just having maybe certain foods on holidays or whatever. Um, but really representing the cultures and doing it with more depth, I guess, and integrating it throughout the entire year, not just isolating it to a specific time of year um, or unit of study. So I think this is necessary because when you're only representing a culture in just these limited, narrow times, um, it could maybe even make the students feel patronized or possibly even misrepresented if they don't relate to whatever you've chosen, how you've chosen to celebrate them. Um, so I was thinking for the scenario, um, so, a lot of times in schools, you'll have um, a party during a certain uh, holiday or something where you have food and things from different countries. But you might pick something because you're not letting the kids be involved. You're not letting them share all the time. Maybe you pick something that's not really from their country of origin, it's from somewhere else. And then like for instance, if you have a Mexican culture table, but you accidentally put something, some items from Guatemala, um, then that would be um, reinforcing a stereotype. So you could maybe advocate for spreading the content throughout the year, incorporating it into the curriculum, uh, and I'm sorry, oh, and maybe even inviting community members, family members to share their cultures so the kids feel more connected and like it's more personal. Um, in one of my last districts, it was a high Latino population, and we had really small classes, and I would talked to the kids a lot about where they were from. I asked them what kind of games they like to play, like if there was anything from their culture that they wanted to share with us that we could do. And so some of them brought games. I bought books that were in Spanish so that they could have the option when we were reading if they wanted to read in Spanish instead of English. I let them pick music. We listened to all different kinds of music um, during class time sometimes. And I noticed that they got really excited. It was junior high kids. But they would start talking about their, their grandparents and where they were from and their cities, and when they would go home and visit. And then I had one student ask me if he could show me his town on Google Earth, and so it was really special um, to me, and I had a lot of fun with them. And I had honestly forgotten kind of about that, and this assignment made me think about the fact that I need to do that uh, with the kids that I currently have. Um, so, given the current circumstances in our schools, and according to your perspective, how easy or difficult is it to be culturally responsive? Um, I think that I think that teachers need training on how to be culturally responsive. I think it's something that I've tried to do in the past without even realizing really what I was doing. And um, So I think having teachers understand that it's not just about recognizing it, but also really actively incorporating it. And then also underfunded schools, the ones that have the most diversity, aren't going to have funding for diverse materials and that professional development. So I think that it could be something that's still pretty difficult to do as far as that goes. Um, and then what are possible implications of not being culturally responsive? Um, I think you could see, students not being engaged, the gaps widening, discipline being an issue. Um, when they spend all this time in a school where they feel like they don't belong, then they are going to start acting out. Um, so it isn't just something that it was nice to think about. It really shapes how they see themselves, and it's uh, something that's super important to include in your campus. So thank you. I'm sorry my post was so long and kept getting jumbled in my mind, but I hope y'all have a great week. Thanks.